If you're watching this video, you're probably thinking about podcasting, or maybe you've already started podcasting and you're wondering what kind of steps you might have missed in the process. Well, podcasting is a long game, and you need to make sure you're doing things up front to make sure you're going to succeed. And here are 5 steps you can do before you even hit record on your first podcast that are going to ensure that you have a successful podcast moving forward. The first thing we need to do is master our elevator pitch plus a question. So when we meet that perfect listener on the elevator, or we meet that perfect sponsor, we need to be able to tell them about our show and sell it. We need to be able to tell them why it's different than everybody else. So we need to know what the other podcasts are out there. We need to know what our competition is doing. We need to know how we are different. We need to be able to pitch that. We need to know about their co-hosts. We need to know who your co-hosts are. We need to know what kind of guests you're going to have. We need to know how you're going to present the information, what kind of format you're using. Everything about your podcast, you need to be able to tell this person in under 30 seconds. And then you're going to need to be able to field any kind of question they have so that you can get them on board to listen to you. If you can master your elevator pitch, this is the first step to starting your podcast. Next, we've got our growth plan and our monetization strategy. Just because we make great content and we put it out on YouTube and we put it out on Spotify doesn't mean that the algorithm is suddenly going to pick it up and we have thousands of followers. We might need to actually push it out further. Get the word out there via other means. And so we might use YouTube Shorts, we might use Instagram, we might use Reddit, we might put ads out by using Google Ads. These are all valid strategies on how we're going to find our audience and grow our audience. Now that we have an audience, we need to figure out how we're going to keep it together. Are we going to use Discord? Are we going to use Patreon for direct monetization? And that brings us back to our monetization strategy. If we're just looking for AdSense dollars, it could take months or years to get that kind of revenue just from the podcast alone. But if we wanted revenue faster, we can offer courses, we can offer classes, we can offer coaching. These are all valid products that we can offer from our podcast, but what we need to do is make sure that the podcast that we're developing and we're putting out there is actually going to drive towards our products. So if you do all this stuff up front, make sure that your podcast is driving forward and meeting your needs. Now that we've got our elevator pitch down, we've got our plan to grow, and we know how we're going to make money from our podcast, we can go ahead and focus on how we're actually going to make our podcast. Now, most of the time, this is when creators go ahead and tell you, it's time to go ahead and get this camera, get this microphone, you want to use this software for your editing. My question is why do we want to go ahead and do all that up front? It makes more sense to me to go ahead and rent a studio, maybe get their expertise and their opinions, and let them do the editing, the camera control, and the microphones for us. That way we can just concentrate on doing our podcast, trying to grow our audience, and doing the things that we need to do up front until we get more comfortable being on camera and doing everything else, and then we can add in the extra controls and once we already get our traction. I would start by looking for spaces that you can rent, maybe other people who can help run some of the equipment, give you ideas. That way you're not doing everything up front at one time, and you're not putting out huge outlays for equipment. Now, if this is not an option, then we can go ahead and start talking about multiple free options, how we can bring in other equipment, other people for free, and we can still grow our podcast using freeware before we actually start investing in heavy-duty equipment like most content creators recommend. It seems like this is a bigger discussion that most people need to be having with their equipment than what they're currently doing, instead of just going straight into gear. This next one might sound a little odd because everybody knows that a podcast is its own business, but are you actually treating it like a business? Is it operating under its own business identity? Does it have its own tax identifier? Have you gotten the right trademark protections? Do you need additional copyright protections? Have you gotten the right insurance? What happens if somebody gets hurt on set? What happens if something happens to the equipment? What happens if you guys get sued because of something you said? All of these need to be figured out before you guys start podcasting. What happens if somebody wants to leave the show? Who owns the intellectual property for your show? Who gets paid what percentage of the revenue when it finally starts making money? All of these can create major hiccups for you guys once you've already started production and once you're already rolling. But by spending the time and doing the work up front, you can go ahead and make sure that there are no surprises. So do the extra steps, make sure you're treating this like a business, make sure you've got all your I's dotted and all your T's crossed. Make sure that the business side is taken care care of before you hit record. That way there is no surprise later. All right, the last thing on here is to lock in your schedule. Look, guys, podcasting is a long-term game. It takes months, years to build your audience, and this is something you guys are going to be doing for months and years going forward. So you need to make sure that you guys have commitment and you're able to commit to this podcast for years. So you need to make sure your schedule aligns to the podcast. You need to have dedicated, set-aside time that you can maintain to do the episodes, to batch build them, so you have content no matter what comes up. You can go on vacation, you can get sick, you've got the content there in the backlog, but you can still maintain it. So it has to be a schedule that you can maintain indefinitely if you're going to commit to podcasting. And that's what I mean by locking in your schedule. You need to be able to lock in a set aside time indefinitely for the remainder of your life. That's how you're going to get successful. If you take care of these 5 things before you even begin podcasting, while it won't guarantee you a successful podcast, it'll make sure you have the foundations in place for what your podcast is going to be, how you're going to grow it, how you're going to make money from it, and what outcomes you're going to be getting. And you're going to not be surprised by anything that happens when you start getting revenue or people change. These things will protect you. They'll make sure you have the foundation you need for your successful podcast for years to come. So I highly recommend you take a look at them and figure out what you need.